them critics who prophesize with your pen. And keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin. And there's no telling who that it's naming was the loser, now will be later to win, for the times they are a-changing.
A Democratic convention is about to begin in a police state. There just doesn't seem to be any other way to say it.
I mean, that just startled us. I mean, here, most people in Chicago went around about their work, didn't even, pay any attention to what was happening out at the amphitheater. But the prejudicial news coverage began with Severide, Cronkite, Frank McGee, the late Frank McGee of NBC, and was really overwhelming and quite surprising.
I have the dubious honor of being one of the first journalists to be beaten up by the Chicago police. It was a very strange situation. We run into this yard where Herman Baptist Church is located. The police come up to the gate and say to us, "Come out of there, expletive deleted." And as we walk through the gate, they beat us with the nightsticks. We have press credentials, we have riot helmets on. And Newsweek had gotten for us at the time. The riot helmets on, the press credentials are hanging around our neck. They knew that we were reporters.
The networks had so overdone and were so wrong at the Democratic convention, and public reaction was even then beginning to flow against the networks. I would say that it was the low point in network television journalism history. And we all know that a few weeks later, Harry Reasoner on CBS, on 60 Minutes, pointed out that the mail at CBS had been running 8-1 against CBS and in favor of Daley and the Chicago Police Department.
The media wouldn't have had the pictures to show if they had been beating them. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, this was not some movie set that had been put together where they brought in a bunch of actors and they brought in a bunch of actors in police uniforms and said, "Lights, action, camera," and then so the guys and the actors in the police uniforms started beating on the actors in the protesters' garb. I mean, this actually was happening, and it was captured on TV. The reason they were beating up the media was because they didn't want it captured. They didn't want it reported.
Most of the time, if the cops could get their hands on you and you had a camera in your hands, they don't give a damn whether you are who you work for. I mean, I just explained that, it's like they just get out of here, or come here, give me that, just no comments at all, just whack, whack, whack. All of that political activity in the first place was about, a strong function of it anyway, was about how to use the media, not just, and media, I mean plural, I mean print, television, and recognizing that television had more power in an actionful sort of way and so forth, to get its message across. I don't think that's invalid. The city administration just blew it, as far as I'm concerned. The Democrats said, "You want the convention in Chicago? Okay, you keep the niggers and the hippies off the streets. If you can do that, you can have it, Daley." And Daley did it.
I know that I would have thought different and viewed everything differently if I had seen it on television, how it happened. But I lived it, and I lived it with the police, and got an idea of what was going through their minds and how they felt about this whole thing and the position that they were put in. And so I've always looked at it differently. I remember when the showdown came Wednesday night in front of the Hilton, and Hosea Robinson was coming through with the Poor People's Wagon Train, coming down Michigan Avenue, going south, and approaching Balboa. And he came up to us and said, "I can't get through the crowd." So we had to the police had to open up a lane for him to come through, and then some of the demonstrators thought the police were roughing them up, and this is part of where the violence really began. And then I know one of the police commanders was leading a skirmish line eastbound on Balboa from Wabash, and what he was doing, in effect, was pushing the demonstrators into the other police line, so the police thought that they were being attacked. And that's how it all began. And the police were not reacting violently at first. They thought they were reacting to violence, and then they reacted violently.
As far as I knew, there were only 3 policemen chasing this crowd back. And
did you do anything to provoke the police?
No, I didn't even see the police. No.
Did you have your camera out?
My camera, while I was shooting at the time, I'm sure. It was easily preventable. Well, I'm no expert on preventing riots, but one of the problems was that the crowds got too large before they tried to disperse them. If you just kept the crowds from reaching that stage, it would have been a lot easier. But by the time the police were, the kids were confronted by the police, or vice versa, there were large crowds, and the police really, I guess that's the only way to get a crowd to move is to threaten them. You know, I have a theory about television news that no matter what you say, you only remember what you see. And that's from my point of view, because I'm a cameraman, but I think the combination of seeing and hearing that night had a big effect, and I do think that the whole world was watching. And it was a television event that happened in a place where live cameras were.
They picked on one part of the city government, and the city police department is the easiest one to take aim at because we're very visible, you know. But and you always get 30-second blurb on TV, which is the final arrest situation. You know, it's like if you watch any confrontation in a sports activity. It's always the guy that reacts that gets caught and ends up getting a penalty. It's not the guy that throws the first punch. And that's what was happening and what a lot of people saw as far as what was going on at the convention. The rocks were being thrown, police officers were being hit and kicked, and then when the police went to arrest somebody, that's the 30 seconds that got on TV instead of the 5-minute confrontation.
The press always takes the side, usually takes the side, of the underdog. That's one of the marvelous, wonderful things about the press. You usually take the side of the fellow that's down. Now, sometimes you may do so to extreme, to the neglect of the rights of the establishment or of authority. And in this instance, you know, at what level did it occur? I don't know. Obviously, the national press, television, national radio, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Time, Newsweek, all of them, the big, powerful, opinion-making national press, were liberally oriented at that time. And they were against the war, and many against America's involvement in the war. So that when you had a riotous condition in the streets and a near riotous condition in the International Amphitheater at the Convention Hall, it lent itself to that, so much so that, as you recall, Walter Cronkite had Mayor Daley on for, what, half an hour or 15 minutes? I forget, I was there.
And how is it that you never show on television, Walter, the crowd marching down the street to confront the police? You show it after, and not you, but I mean television industry, shows it after it happened. Is the television industry interested in this violence? Certainly I know that violence is the one thing that people write about in newspapers, and radio, and television, and magazines, and on this medium of communication. I'd like to have them show the 51 policemen that were injured. Did anyone show the picture of the confrontation with the deputy superintendent telling them you can march if you march on the sidewalk and march any place? No one has carried that on this television or any other television. Why wasn't this carried? Here's the police saying to them, you have no permit, you're unlawfully marching, but we will let you march on the street if you will follow, or on the sidewalk if you'll follow instructions. We'll let. Did you show any pictures of anyone sitting in the streets on Michigan Avenue, blocking the traffic?
It was a studied, calculated decision of CBS and Walter Cronkite to sit there and just ask the questions and let Mr. Daley, Mayor Daley, answer or make his own charges, namely that the rioters were wrong, that the press was slanted, and that the city was doing nothing more than trying to defend, keep law and order.
A lawful order to clear the streets is a lawful order to clear the streets. But if people are only standing there to demonstrate their politics, and if you can allow a candlelight procession the next night or something like that, what is the justification of clubbing them out of the street in as vicious a manner as was done? Gassing people en masse, and doing it in a stupid fashion in front of the world's television cameras. And from Chicago, not even New York or LA, for crying out loud. Al Capone, da 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 da. That's what that means. It's just another image.